Hey everyone, I'm Shiva, and I've been lucky enough to work alongside some exceptional product teams over my career. Starting first at Google and YouTube, then at Spotify, WeWork, and currently Facebook. One thing that unites all of those cultures was a focus on product excellence. And accordingly, I've always tried to recreate a tool inspired by Google's LaunchCal in each of those organizations. Partially because it puts process in the background and fundamentally helps people have the time and energy they need to focus on a great experience. But also because a LaunchCal is a great teaching tool, which I'll get into now. Before we jump in, let's start with some basics and principles. First and foremost, the idea here is not to ship through a consensus. Great products are built with fantastic intuition and design that solves a problem, and also an obsessive focus on solving that problem with elegance, efficiency, and independence. Nothing about this should get in the way of that. Second is that reviews are often seen as attacks. I believe a better mental model for organizations is to think of your review team as a backstage crew that's helping you have an exceptional launch. Something you can celebrate on Product Hunt, something that impacts the people you serve. Today, there are many things to think about: policy, privacy, product marketing, and packaging. And LaunchCals are a great way to get your dream team contributing versus reacting at the last minute. And third is, I know that many people view process as the enemy of progress. But if implemented with the minimum effort your org can support, great launch mechanics become great teaching tools, and they can become a repository of post-launch analytics, insights, and postmortems that allow you to learn and iterate as teams. So let's jump into this. Okay, first, let's start with the actors in the mix. We've got launchers, and those are, you can think of them as your product teams working together to get a launch out there into the world. You've got reviewers. Again, think of those as people who contribute to a launch and make it better. And then finally, stakeholders. Maybe not closely connected to your launches, but they need the stories around those launches, or they need to understand how to package them effectively, or they just may have questions about your productivity, honestly, at times. So put that all together. We're going to go through how a LaunchCal can work for those constituents and help you ship great stuff. Okay, to start, I'm going to put myself as a launcher. Pretend like I'm the product manager for a release. I'm going to jump in here, go to my launch center, and you'll see some real basic stuff, right? But let's just go to the most basic thing, which is adding a new launch. Quickly get to a simple table, some active launches out there, and I'm going to click on the button. Let's start with a launch I'd really be excited to see, but let's take the things that have been really great on the internet recently and forever, cat NFCs together as one. Let's put this in design stage. I'm the PM, of course. I can easily come down here and select a series of reviewers. Let me select David here. Let me go with Hannah. And I know that I should have a few different folks in the mix, Phil and Payush. Now, obviously, for some of these things, you might have defaults. You can make it more sophisticated, but let's keep it basic. And then a target date. Well, you may not learn much from this, but one thing you're going to learn is that October 29th, right before Halloween, is National Cat Day in our country. And yes, I know that, top of my head. And then finally, I'm going to add some launch steps. And of course, these launch steps can be configured by organization. So one-click button to be able to do that and set up this launch. All done. A launch is created. Naturally, I can go over to my launches and check that out. You'll see my new Cat NFCs launch sitting there. And this is where some of the magic starts. So let me deep dive into this. I've got that launch. And what's important here is a set of templates that effectively allow you to take your product culture and make that more uniform across your teams. Like, for example, one thing that I've learned to appreciate, it's very famous at Amazon, but the idea of creating a press release and an FAQ around every product. So if I was to add that PR here, I could click on that, create a new template for me. If I scroll up, it's a press release. The basic idea is, what's this product all about? How can I describe it? What does it solve for? What are the FAQs externally and internally? And I love it when teams write this on day one of product inception versus at the end. It makes you think very carefully about what you're shipping and whether it resonates and will have impact. That's just one example. Whatever you might have as special sauce around your launches, there's things that you can start to create as core templates that people reuse and or learn from prior launches. Let me go back to my launches and go back to that detail. One important thing here too, of course, as I talked about earlier, is that launch checklist. So these are all the things that need to happen around a launch. Now, this is pretty exhaustive, and you might be simpler, you might be more advanced in some cases, but it's great to, again, have a tool by which people understand everything you need to do so they can kick it off, find out what's optional, what's recommended, what's essential, and make sure they're going through that process with the guidance that they need and with the reviewers that really matter. Okay, so I've created a launch, got my launch over here. Now I'm going to put on a different hat now. Let's move over to being a reviewer. Let's assume I'm in design, and my role is to ensure that we have consistency across various experiences we launch, so we avoid the Frankenstein that can emerge as companies grow and get more sophisticated and have more velocity. With velocity comes a lot of different experiences at once, which can confuse key constituents. I've often seen this review work alongside of formal design reviews. In other words, have some people who are looking at it holistically, creators, advertisers, people using your services. How is this all coming together from one audience lens? So if I was to go down here, that's where some fun new content and lenses oriented around these types of actors like reviewers. So I might jump in the review center, I can go into design review, and I can see all the upcoming launches, which ones are approved, etc., and jump into the ones that I want to take a look at. Again, this could be more sophisticated. You could imagine tagging launches with the particular audience in mind, and someone coming in here and just viewing those launches that are tagged with creator or viewer as an example. Next, let me hop into a slightly different view, which is that of the stakeholder. In product leadership roles, I've often been asked a lot of questions. And these are often taxes where you might scramble and put together information, pull your teams, try to pull this information together. But what's nice about having a LaunchCal is that all of the stuff is ready to go. So imagine those questions. What's launching soon? Are our teams all producing impact? Why do we need to keep growing these teams? How should we plan our marketing efforts end of year? Collection of things that come up, which instead of being taxes, could also be solved very easily with this tool. So let's go down to the Stakeholder Center, and I'm going to jump into the view of first just the basic namesake of the doc, and I'm going to go back in time a little bit to see some of these upcoming launches that are coming up. So you can see in June, it looks like we've got 4 launches set up here. I can jump into different views and detail around that. For example, what's going on at a launch-specific level and more of a Gantt view of what's happening. But you can start to set up queries and views at this point that allow stakeholders to answer their most common questions or the questions that you might get asked as a product manager all the way up to product leadership. And it's great to be able to answer these questions with the click of the button versus a mad scramble. So with that, I don't want to spend too much time on this other than to say that here's a pretty exhaustive setup in terms of all the things that might go on in a LaunchCal. I'm really excited about the feedback about you using this, stuff that's missing, stuff that you'd like to see more of. And with that, thanks for listening, and I hope this might be useful for you.